There's a language we all understand with an equal opportunity for all to sing, dance, and clap their hands. But just because the record has a groove, don't make it in the groove. But you can tell right away left to A when the people start to move. They can feel it all over. They can feel it all over people. They can feel it all over. They can feel it all over people. Music knows it is and always will be one of the things that life just won't quit. But here's some of music's pioneers that time will not allow us to forget now. Well, there's Basie Miller, Satchmo, and the king of all Sadu. And with a voice like Alice ringing out, there's no way the band could lose. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. Yeah, go. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. I can feel it all over my neighbor. Can't you feel it all over? Come on, let's feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. Everybody all over, people. Go! Go on the look. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. I said, Georgia, Georgia, a song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Other arms reach out to me. Other eyes smile tenderly. Still in the peaceful dreams I see, the road leads back to you. I said, Georgia, oh Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Her arms reach out to me. Her eyes smile tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Whoa, Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. I say just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. That's right, hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's webinar. Welcome to Connecting the Dots Educator Series. My name is Andrea Voss, and I look after the accessibility solutions for education in Ontario as well as the Atlantic provinces. Today's webinar presentation is called the Bridges Program at W. Ross Macdonald, presented by Dan Majacomo, Marissa Parker, and Darren Rohrbeck, all of W. Ross Macdonald School. Dan is the principal of W. Ross Macdonald School and Resource Services. He has worked at the school for the past 17 years as a residence counselor, teacher, and administrator. He is a past member of the CNIB Lake Joseph Advisory Board, current president of AER Ontario, and has been involved with Ontario Blind Sports Association for several years. Marissa has worked in the field of vision education for 19 years. She's had many roles at W. Ross Macdonald School, including music therapist, classroom teacher, and her current role as educational coordinator. Marissa enjoys interacting with education professionals across the province and developing new programming options at W. Ross Macdonald School. Darren has worked in various teaching roles in both the Thames Valley District School Board as well as the Provincial and Demonstration Schools branch, including Resource Services. He is currently the guidance counselor at W. Ross Macdonald School in Brantford. Prior to teaching, Darren supported students who are blind and partially sighted as an orientation and mobility instructor in Ontario, Alberta, as well as the Northwest Territories. Please join me in welcoming Dan, Marissa, and Darren.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for the welcome. Glad to be here. I'm going to start off just by giving an overview of the Bridges program. Darren and Marissa are going to jump in and support as required, and I may call on them for some specific portions of the presentation. So I do see some names on here that I recognize. So hello to those of you that I have met before. And also greetings to those folks I've never met. Nice to meet you. We will, obviously, we're going to make sure there's lots of time at the end for any questions that may come up. But also, I think I think Andrea will be monitoring the chat as well. So she can pass on those questions as needed. I am in a school, so if you hear any announcements or anything like that, my apologies. So to start off, I'm going to talk about what the Bridges program is. It is literally what we consider to be a bridge between secondary school and post-secondary, a program that incorporates elements of both, all towards the goal of supporting the transition to post-secondary education. We've got to focus on ECC, expanded core curriculum is a key component of this course. Also addressing any gaps in the academics, particularly in terms of literacy skills. Writing often comes up as a challenge for our student population. We also want to help these students generate a feeling of independence and agency. The fact that we want to share with them the thoughts that they can make their own way in the world. And we think that the Bridges program is a great way to do that. The history of the Bridges program, it's an interesting one. It's been on the books for a number of years. I always like to say that. It was originally conceived as something that was something quite different. The original idea was Bridges was that students would come in for a short period of time at some point in their education and then go back to their district school boards. We've always had that model here for many, many years. That wouldn't be something new to us. What we felt, though, was that the key component missing was we always had students come at the end of their careers. There was always a select small number of students who would choose to stay in their district school board setting throughout their education. But then they would get to the end of their education, and it would be felt by perhaps themselves, their families, teachers of the visually impaired, TVIs, classroom teachers, any staff, that maybe there were some things that were missing. Maybe there were some things, further work that needed to be done to facilitate that transition to post-secondary education. So we would have these students come in, and I recall one student in particular. It was early in my time as a principal here, and the student came in, and the student had lots of needs, but was also a very strong academic student. And I think we all felt here that we could have done more with that student, that we had all the capacity to make sure that that student landed on their feet in post-secondary, but that we lacked the focus to be able to do that. So part of the exercise of coming up with this program was an opportunity to focus all of our resources here, which are considerable, into smoothing out that transition. I'm happy to report that that student is now working on their master's degree, so they did land on their feet, but I think we could have made that transition more smooth for that student. We also heard from TVIs around the province over the years, some of the frustrations that they had in meeting all the needs of their students, particularly around the expanded core curriculum, but also around the transition piece and the support that guidance departments in district school boards were able to offer. It's always important to note that a guidance teacher in a district school board setting, they may have 300 or 400 students. It's a tall order to ask a guidance counselor, a guidance teacher to take on one individual student to such a high degree as may be required, to perhaps the detriment of the other students in terms of the time that needs to be put in. So it's a big challenge for them. Of course, TVIs have a range of caseloads around the province. There's no hard and fast rules around what a caseload should be. Some find themselves with caseloads of 50 or 60, others with 15 or 16. So the capacity to support these students in a variety of ways varies depending on the situation in board to board. So the traditional framework as well, some traditional school framework, sometimes an opportunity to go somewhere and receive instruction in a setting that has a living arrangement and round the clock expertise and those sorts of things, that's hard to replicate. So the opportunity to do that for a one-year period is a significant advantage for a lot of students. And of all the students we've had come forward so far for Bridges, the TVIs have been the central figure in that student coming forward. They've all been put forward by TVIs, and indeed part of the application process is really we access the knowledge and the skills and the expertise of the TVIs in helping us move those students into and through the program. So when we decided to start this program, the natural thing for us to do was actually to gather as many stakeholders as we could around the province. And we had input from over 24 district school boards in the province. And for context, there are, I think, 64 district school boards, English-speaking district school boards in Ontario. So that was a pretty significant number. We hosted them here at W. Ross. We also reached out online as well. And we got as much feedback as we could about what the challenges were, what they felt the needs were of these students as they entered post-secondary, where they felt the gaps were. And we listened to those, and we used that feedback in order to put together this program. We also had excellent input from the folks at CNIB at the time. CNIB, I know we've got a couple different branches now, but they were there as well in person and working with us collaboratively. Even more importantly, of course, is we got the information from students themselves. We listened to students who were in post-secondary already. We listened to our former students who'd gone through our program, what was missing, what could we have done better, and then we helped create the program with all of that input. The beginning of the program was 7 students, and it was last September. And it had a promising start. We had some students, come forward, change their mind last minute. That happens at all times at W. Ross. Not everybody can commit at the same time and in the same way. So we had some students, 7 out of a possible 10 was the maximum for the program at the time. And we had one that we weren't quite sure of, and she opted out of the program mid-year. That happens from time to time. And then, of course, as we were getting rolling and we were learning all kinds of interesting things about how we should approach and et cetera, COVID happened. So the program, and I'll get into all the specifics around the program, but it was a bit of a rocky start, but I think we learned enough in those initial months now to move it forward. This year, we actually have a full complement. We have 10 students in the program. Actually, we would have had 11 if we had space, but that student is still here accessing some of the elements of that program with just a few differences. And what we learned, of course, is that as always with our population, that the individual approach is the optimal approach with our students. And we really have altered and changed the program as we've moved along, listening to all the feedback that we've been getting throughout the course. One of the other things that we did early on was we reached out to a few of our partners in our colleagues in the United States, one of which being Perkins School. And they have a similar program. They got it off the ground the year before we did. And we learned some of the things that they did, some of the things the challenges that they had. What we found, and they readily admitted to some of the challenges that they had. We found that the challenges that they had were actually our strengths. The ability to bring students in to beforehand, to get them to bring them in for a week or more if needed the prior year to get to know those students and how they would fit in the program. We call it a trial week here. And some of the things that way that really played to our strengths as a school. Of course, our program is free to students and free to district school boards. Theirs cost at an adjusted rate, reduced rate, was $60,000 per student. So there's an advantage there. Free is always an advantage, right? Darren or Marissa, is anything missing there so far? Anything you want to jump in, or should I just move along?
I think you're good so far, Dan.
Awesome.
Agreed.
So I'm going to go into who is the program for. Then we'll look at the structure of the program, and then looking ahead. So the program really is for students bound for post-secondary education. That is, they're going to college or they're going to university. We recently had a conversation with the folks down at Texas State School for the blind and visually impaired, and they run a program like Bridges, smaller, but my impression is a highly effective program. They also run programs for students not bound for post-secondary. And we often get asked that question, do you have space for that profile of students? The answer is yes. We don't have an identifiable program for those students, but we do have a lot of options for those for that particular student profile. And certainly we are looking in the future at what can we do for those students in a more sort of cohesive way. So this program is for students who are headed to post-secondary. It's for students who have applied to the program before they have graduated. That doesn't mean that they necessarily need to graduate from W. Ross. A lot of our students, they may apply in the spring of the year that they graduate. They're admitted for the following September, and then they arrive in that September. That's generally true of us. We can't take, for the most part, except under exceptional circumstances, we can't take students who have already graduated. There are circumstances where we do, but often not. The first thing to know about the course and what is really one of the inspiring pieces is that connection with the post-secondary institutions. The most important connection that we have is with Conestoga College. Conestoga College is based out of Kitchener, not Waterloo, Kitchener, and they have a campus here, a fairly new campus in Brantford. And they've taken over some of the space previously used by Nipissing University. And they've been very, very receptive. They've worked very collaboratively with us, and we have combined with them to offer dual credits. So those are courses where you're getting a high school credit, you're also getting a college credit, and they go together. And the original idea was to have students go to the campus, participate with in a college course alongside college students, and feel what it's like with the supports that we offer here at the school. And it started very well. We had students attend the Waterloo campus, and we also had another group because we had a lot of students who were wishing to do the dual credits. We also had another group attend the Brantford campus. It's interesting to note that I think from our feedback, the most successful in-person presence was actually the Brantford campus. And it's because the students were able to go there independently, navigate down to the campus, learn the route, access all of the things around the campus. The campus in Kitchener is a bit of an island unto itself. I think it's quite large, very car focused. It has lots of things to offer our students. If they were students there in that region, it would be more amenable, but we were driving students there. They were getting off, they were going to the class, going back, and then getting into the car. So into the van. So it wasn't as an interesting student experience as it was for the students attending the Brantford campus. The process itself, I think, was really important. We worked with folks from Conestoga, one of whom was blind herself and understood the needs of our students, obviously, so well. And we connected early on with that accessibility department, made a trip up there, worked on getting the students all ready in terms of the accessibility required for the program, going through that process. And really, I think the benefit of that is they've gone through it once with a college. When they transition to a college or university after secondary school, they already have that experience. There's paperwork that can carry through. There's experience that can carry through. So it's really excellent. So they go through that whole process. Then they attend the college classes. There's a different expectation there. Certainly, we found that students that were less invested in the high school arena were more invested in the college arena. They felt that they were in a different place. And that's really what we want to do with this program. We want them to feel that it's not just secondary. It's not a continuation of high school. Yet it's also not quite full-on post-secondary. It is this sort of intermediary thing. And so when we design everything, that's the central philosophy that we have in mind, is that they need to feel like this is really not just still preparing while on one step. They've already gone to the next step. That's really, really important for the program. So yeah, a lot of great feedback from the instructors, a lot of great feedback from the students, from everybody involved. Then one of the other important pieces was the technology component. And lo and behold, it turned out to be probably the most important aspect at this point, is because all of these programs involve an online component. In Conestoga's case, they use a D2L platform. I think that's pretty consistent across many, many colleges and universities. There's a few colleges and universities that use other software platforms, but D2L, I think, is probably the most popular right there. And so we had folks from the college come sit with our students while here at W. Ross Macdonald, go through all of the all of the things that they would have to know to be able to access the D2L platform, problem solve, troubleshoot, doing all those things. And when we took a step back and looked at how they did, by the end of those sessions, they were all able to access what they needed independently with very, very few problems that weren't easily solved. So really highly effective and excellent collaboration with Conestoga College. Can't say enough good things about that organization. I'm going to continue with the structure of the program, but I don't mind stopping for questions if there are any. I can.
Dan, Darren here. The one thing
Yeah.
I just thought we could add when we were designing the program as well, the Bridges program, you mentioned the community partners and their feedback, but one of the other key pieces was the student voice piece and
Yes.
students who had graduated. Maybe you want to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so we surveyed a lot of those students. We actually surveyed some students who never attended W. Ross as well. Obviously, that was vital because while the program is open to students who have been at W. Ross previously, the primary focus of the program has been since the inception, those students who didn't get the benefit of whatever it is we're able to offer should they require it, right? So those students spoke a lot about those initial stages and steps in the post-secondary world, how challenging they were, the stressors. The stressors are immense for this population stepping into post-secondary world. They go from a world where they feel, whether or not they're in our environment or in a district school board environment, in best case scenarios in both of those environments, they feel very supported. They have lots of people who know them and have known them for a long period of time. They have people who care deeply about their success and want to see that success. And then they enter in that post-secondary world. And while there are people who care, it suddenly feels like those people aren't there anymore because they're different people and they have different capacities to work with those students. So yeah, we really did listen to that population. One of the other things that I found was it wasn't just about the academic portion and the accessing of the academic supports. I can remember one conversation with a former student that I had, and he had spent significant time in a district school board setting and significant time here at W. Ross. And he said, the school itself, I'm doing okay, my classes and everything else, but I'm bereft of anything to do. I have no social activities. There's no sports here. There are no friends like I had in my district school board or I had at W. Ross. I don't know what to do. And that sat with us. And one of the partners that we actually brought to the table was folks from the city of Brantford, because learning how to access social recreation, leisure opportunities in your district school board, that's a key component of the expanded core curriculum, which I think sometimes we take for granted. Even here at W. Ross, we do all these fun things. The kids are in everything imaginable. And in district school board setting, we've got TVIs are working so hard to get these kids involved in what's at the school. Then we take it for granted that that's going to happen post-secondary in these environments. And what we found is we need to be much more intentional about taking those first steps and much more intentional about engaging with folks in city environments and things like that. So yeah, a lot of great feedback from the students. The voice of the students was heard loud and clear and continues to be heard. I mean, we asked them, how is it going? Obviously on a daily basis, but at the end of it, we want to hear what happened to these kids, what happened to these students, how is first year going, what's happening to you, so on and so forth. It is a little bit funny right now because unfortunately we know they're all learning at home online. So we can talk about the online component. One of the things that we're getting involved in right now is surveying students and former students to talk about their experiences during COVID in regards to their education, both secondary and post-secondary. So that'll be an interesting topic. Any other thoughts or questions from Darren or Marissa or anybody else?
I'm just going to jump in here for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead, Marissa.
We had a question actually in the chat panel, and it was timely because I was just going to talk about this. The question is, what assistive technologies are Bridges students learning? Is any recommended by the school? And that actually came up for me when I was just listening to you talk about that in terms of something interesting that happened, I think, for the students here that went on to Conestoga College and were working with their D2L system, and also taking exams at Conestoga College as well. The students had kind of an interesting learning experience there in terms of finding out what the colleges would accept for their assistive technology. It might not be what they were hoping to use. So it was a good experience for our kids to understand that they may have to use some different types of, especially screen reading software. Some of the colleges and universities have their own stipulations around which software you can use during testing circumstances or exam circumstances, particularly. So that was something that our students really found out in real time, which was a great experience for them. But also, the students that are coming in for Bridges are often really good tech users to start with. So sometimes for them, it's really just tweaking and working to work their best, most efficient way of working through the technologies they already know, and how those technologies interface with things like D2L, because that was a big learning experience for a lot of our kids, was that D2L portion.
Sorry, Marissa, it's Andrea. I'm just, is there any way you could either speak a little louder, or is there any way that you could be a little closer to the mic? I just,
Yep.
Somebody had, had mentioned that it would be, you were just a little bit,
Quiet.
yes.
Okay, sorry, hang on 1 second.
Project that singing voice.
Yeah, she's got a singing voice. Yeah,
That's
go ahead,
right.
Marissa. Use your singing voice.
I'll get a little closer, hang on. I'm gonna shut that off. Okay, do I have to answer that again?
Let's see. I don't think so.
Okay, that's good, because that was top of my head, so
Okay.
it wouldn't have come out the same.
Okay.
Dan or
Okay.
Darren, do either one of you have something that you want to add to that in terms of the tech piece?
I think the tech is a really key piece, obviously, in our current situation with COVID and everybody learning online. That is a portion that, as Marissa and Dan have both said, many of the students that come for the Bridges program, their tech skills are quite, they're quite proficient. However, there are always other platforms to learn as well. And one of the key takeaways was, that year may be an opportunity to learn elements of a different platform. Many screen readers share, similarities, but there are some key differences. The ability for students to be able to transition from one screen reader to another, whether it's at post-secondary and, the D2L platforms, or the, or in their career when they complete their post-secondary and they move into the work environment, it's the more robust and the more usability that they have is certainly going to serve them well, and in terms of access. So that's something that, again, for our own learning in terms of the Bridges program, that is an element of technology that we have, that we're more aware of and are promoting in terms of that piece of the program.
So I think that's probably a good spot to jump off into, the rest of the structure of the program, so much of which centers on the ECC. And one of the key pieces is in the mornings, first period every day, the anchor course for this program is a interdisciplinary studies course. So that means you take curriculum from several different courses and you put it together in such a way as to meet a particular need. And the school creates that. It is a program created at the school level. And so we created two courses called Expanded Core Curriculum for Post-Secondary Success. So that is these are credited courses that the students take that are geared towards their specific needs of those individuals who are blind or partially sighted. So really a key piece of it, taught by an excellent teacher. And it really ties in so many of the pieces that are required, but also provides an opportunity for that sort of further academic support that may be required. I mean, sometimes even for our post-secondary bound students, there are pieces of the puzzle still missing when they hit the age of 17 or 18, right? So we need to fill those in. And then the college, the dual credit courses, we found so far a lot of success, I think, with that initial course, which is, of course, all around the skills that you need for post-secondary success. I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head. Do you, Darren? What I'm thinking about there?
In terms of the literacy
course
skills,
name.
writer's craft, presentation, speaking skills.
Oh, I'm thinking of the dual credit one. Do you remember which one
Oh,
that?
student success for higher learning, as well as human psychology. Yes.
Yeah. Those are the two courses, and I know that question will come up. Those are the two courses that we focus on because they're applicable to, you know, any program that any student is taking. They're about skills, and then the psychology one is interesting, and obviously in so many post-secondary programs, psychology comes into it. So that anchor course is vital. It's a big part of what the program is. But then the rest of it is highly individualized. In terms of the ECC supports, you know, we look at things on a basis of severity of need. So, you know, we have students accessing right now 80 minutes of orientation mobility 4 times a week. Pretty high level of service. I think it's as high as you'd find anywhere at this stage. Because those students have an extraordinarily high need for that orientation and mobility. So sometimes, and that could be tech instruction, it could be furthering Braille skills, though we don't find that much. And obviously independent living skills, they may be accessing individualized lessons that are equal or even greater to that amount of orientation and mobility I just discussed. But then also, it's also wrapped in what they're doing. It's, you know, trips out to the grocery store, it's trips to the college, all of those sorts of things. They're using those skills with the support of individuals, you know, an orientation and mobility instructor going out to the college with that individual, sending an independent living skills specialist to go out. Can they access a cafeteria line? Can they access restaurants in the area? Those sorts of things that we know our students really need to be able to access to, you know, the central philosophy is, if you spend all of this time and energy and effort and emotional commitment to just living, there isn't a lot of room for your academics. So we need to make those things easier so our students can focus on the academic components, and that's the all-around success that we're looking for. So
Oh, sorry, I thought there was a break there. There's a couple of questions, and I wasn't sure. Is that okay to ask?
Yeah.
Okay, so Josie is asking, did any of the Bridges students become involved in the social fabric at Conestoga College?
No, and the reason being, I mean, they connected with students at in the courses, but because they're not in a residence there and they're not doing multiple courses and being there all day, pretty hard thing to do. But certainly the great thing is, you know, the class, there were 30 some odd students in the class. They're in the group, they're working on group skills, they're doing things together. Some of our students were really the top of the class. I mean, I think back to one student, Lily, I think she was the most involved class member out of all of those 30 some odd students that were in the course. So within the context of what they were doing in the classroom, yes, but overall, because you're only dipping your toes into the college world, I guess we'll say, aside from the academic component, not really, no.
Right, and Josie was just asking, would they have been, or are they able to join clubs there?
At Conestoga?
I think so.
Yeah, you know, we unfortunately, because of the timing of COVID, a lot of the things that we were hoping to do in the springtime did not come to fruition. We had discussions with the city and we were looking at what Conestoga had on offer. And because remember, for a lot of these students, they're coming into W. Ross. You have to think W. Ross can be, I don't want to say an overwhelming environment, but suddenly there are things on the plate, things on the menu that for some of these students haven't been on there before. So for them, the jump to go from a setting where perhaps they weren't engaging with these things in large amount straight over the W. Ross context and into the college context, that wasn't the right fit. What really needs to happen is that they jump from the one environment into the W. Ross environment where they can access, you know, all kinds of sports and clubs and things like that. And then by the end of that year, they're starting to access things offered by the city, things offered by the college. That's the general sort of pathway that we would be seeking for those students who haven't had access to that kind of thing before. For some of our students who entered the program, certainly, you know, they were they were ready for those sorts of things earlier on than perhaps some of the district school board students just coming in. Different experience.
Right. And there's just one more question from Deborah. She's asking, she's got a two-parter. Is Bridges going to be on campus in September 2021? And how many high school credits can kids earn? This would take the pressure off of grade 12.
Yeah, so I sure hope it's on campus in 2021. It's on campus here at W. Ross. So, I mean, that's something. The way we design, we have that college experience in mind when we're bringing these students in. They don't go to class in our secondary school, although they may opt for some classes in the secondary school. The Bridges component is in a different section of our campus. And for those of you who've not been here, it is the size of a small college. So, you get some of the flavor, I guess. It's in a different building. They live in a different portion. And I'll get to that component around the residents in a little bit that I think will start to make sense in terms of what that experience is like. But fingers crossed, somebody gets us some vaccines down here to Brantford Stat and we can all get on campus again. And then the other component, how many credits can they earn? 8, I guess, probably a lot. As 6 would be, I don't know, Marissa, Darren, I mean, 6 would be probably the maximum number, but you've got 2 dual credits. You've got those 2 classes in the morning, there's 4, and then another class each semester, at least, maybe 2 the first. So 6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, we had a number of students who they were taking even maybe had 1 spare for the entire year, so they would have been earning 7 credits at W. Ross. In addition to, we had several students who took 2, like both of the dual credits. So now you're talking 9 credits, which wouldn't really be doable typically, but the dual credit, the way that we restructure it with Conestoga, allowed them to do the dual credit and do a credit here at the school almost at the same time, with the flexibility that the teachers were able to provide, which is great because it was such a valuable learning opportunity for them. And the key to that is, these are students when they're going to be heading off to post-secondary the following year. There are going to be times where they are going to be heavily involved with coursework, and times where it's going to be a little more lax. And this is one of the learning pieces that we were hoping Bridges would be able to actually mimic and give those students the opportunity to see, because it actually leads into the things like time management and organization skills and all those things that we talk about in terms of a student success and expanded core curriculum. Now applying it in an unfamiliar environment like W. Ross, like Conestoga College, for some of the students who are coming from district school boards, a very valuable learning opportunity for them to sort of, juggle that time and be able to come up with some strategies and see, where am I not doing so well in managing my time, and what are some strategies that I can come up with. So with the teachers and the advocacy that there is going to be required, connecting with the college instructor, working in residence with some of the staff, they were able to develop some of those skills over the year, which again are going to serve them very well as they head out the following year into post-secondary. And there's not going to be the same element of surprise and alarm that we did hear from some of the student voice when we were first looking at this program and looking at some of the gaps that we really wanted to address.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Darren, for sure. So Andrea, if there's no other questions, I'll just jump ahead to a few other components here of the program. Back to the courses, they are highly individualized. We have a student who came this year who had never done automotive or carpentry, and he's already got his foot in the Mohawk College door when he first arrived here, and wow, he is just pumped, absolutely pumped to be taking those things. He'd never been exposed to those things before, not because of his vision loss, but actually his high school just didn't offer those things. The other thing was music. He's studying music for the first time. He's if he's not in class, he's down practicing drums. It's been his new passion, right? So we can open up some doors sometimes for students who didn't have those opportunities previously, which I think is an exciting thing. And then sometimes our students come, they're missing some credits. they need, they head to university, they still need U credits, 1 or 2 or more, whatever. We offer a pretty full range of university credits. In the last few years, we've offered everything from physics, all the science and physics, chemistry, biology, some 12U maths, 12U English, 12U histories, 12U, all of those things. So if for the more academic students, and then for the students college bound, if there are things that are going to support that learning in secondary, they need to improve some skills. They've got that opportunity as well. Oftentimes the college students have what they need in terms of credits, but they have that opportunity here as well. So we individualize most of it. Marissa, you got
So
something
just
you want
going
to
to jump in and say,
Yeah.
You're right. Sometimes some of our students do already have a lot of credits or don't have any needs in terms of the credits to head to post-secondary. And then they can often participate in things like our outdoor education classes and that sort of thing that they may not have had that opportunity to do in their own school boards. So that's helpful too.
Yeah, that's an important piece actually. I mean, unfortunately, COVID ruined our outdoor ed class last year, but it's such a huge draw for many of our students, that program. It offers experiences that high schools, just in generally speaking, they're not able to do in large part anymore. Some high schools still do, but many others they just don't offer those things anymore. So it's nice that we're still able to. The individual is. Yeah.
Just from Ashley, just related to what you just said, can students have enough that already have enough credits to graduate still be able to apply to Bridges?
Yep. Yeah, they can. They just need to make sure that they apply before that graduation happens. Yeah, and that's the important piece, because if we have a student applying, I mean the process, which we'll talk about quickly at the end, and it goes to the admission committee and the superintendent for admission to the program, they may ask, the student already has a diploma, what are the needs of the student? And superintendents change and that sort of thing. So they're not always as aware of these programs as other superintendents as they kind of cycle through our system. So the ECC supports are also really individualized. I touched base on that. Originally we were so set on this idea that the program was the program. And we started to backpedal quite a bit, because we found that these students, you think about one thing we haven't touched on yet is work experience. So many of the students come in, they haven't had access to work experience programs because of courses, because of location, whatever the cause. So they really want that experience, co-op, some other type of work experience. So we offer them that. And it's really hard to juggle everything, but we do our best in an individualized way to get them everything that they need. From time to time, you get a student come in who just wants everything under the sun, and we have to help that student focus on what they need and what's important. But we try to offer up everything that we can. So again, going back to the structure of the program, there is a basic structure centered around that post-secondary experience with the dual credits. Those courses in the morning, the ECC skills for post-secondary success, they're a vital component. But then also stemming from that is the residence experience. It was absolutely vital that these students get a taste of independent living. And a lot of the feedback that we got was around the opportunity to be independent. And so traditionally at W. Ross, we had a system for many years where a student would go through the variety of residences if they were here as a junior, then intermediate, senior. And then at the end, there was something called, we call the house program. And the house program is literally, we have 2 houses on campus where, maybe up to 10 students can live in 2 different sections of each. So a total of around 20 students. And the expectations around independence were very high. The students were doing their cooking, they were cleaning, they were shopping, they were doing all these things independently. They were managing their own time and their own, with the support of one staff member who was kind of overseeing the whole house, and a staff member who had the skills to teach, but also that high level of maturity needed to be able to know exactly when to step back, step in, and to sort of feather things very carefully so as to maximize the time in that environment. that house program, if you talk to students, former students of W. Ross who've gone through it, they often talk about the house program as the one key element that meant independence for them. And so we really wanted to offer that experience, obviously, to our Bridges program. The challenge really is around, we knew the skills and abilities of the students who had gone through at least our senior residence. We knew where they were. We would talk about them on a daily basis, what they were able to do and what they were still working on. And so when we have a student coming in from a district school board setting, we're not always entirely sure of where they are in terms of their skill set. So we have to be extra vigilant around giving them the appropriate level of support, which may be higher than a student who's already had 2 or 3 or more years of experience living in that type of environment. But it's an increased challenge. But where we were able to get to and what the end goal is that each one of these students is going to, before the end of that year, live in an apartment here on campus independently with a roommate. And so before COVID hit, we had, I think it was 3 girls living in an apartment. There were staff nearby, but not in the apartment. They didn't live in there with them. They didn't stay in there with them. These girls managed their own affairs. There was assistance if they needed it. They were doing their own thing, cooking, cleaning, taking care of business, occupying themselves, doing their own time, deciding what they were going to do on every spare moment of the day, up to them. And yeah, it's success. I don't know, Darren, Marissa, if you want to weigh in. I only saw it as a success with those 3 particular students. There were no downs that I could conceive of, but any thoughts?
I think it was a group of girls that were living together. They had a great experience. They learned a lot, and we talk in this program a lot about giving students the opportunity to fail in a supported environment. And I think that those young ladies did have some challenges that came up, things that they didn't know until they occurred. And it was great for them to have the support here instead of having that situation happen to them, you know, this year where they're away at post-secondary. They were able to deal with the situation here in a supported environment and then take that experience and use it in the future. So it was great for them.
If I just add to that, I think another key piece is there really is by the time that the students that are coming for the Bridges program, they often feel like they are ready to move on. There's a sense that they have, you know, achieved all that they are going to in high school. I think when they come to the Bridges program, though, it does give them an opportunity to stop and reflect and say, okay, I think I still have some additional learning to do. And, you know, that self-reflection is really key, because while they may be very much set in their academics and they're, you know, in many cases, they're close to or having graduated with their requirements for their diploma and their prerequisites to apply for their post-secondary programs, there's all those other areas that we've already touched on in terms of the expanded core curriculum and those opportunities to actually apply that word independence into the actual their day-to-day lives. Because again, if they haven't been at the school here, and this is the first year that they've been at W. Ross, having done the majority of their education in a district school board, this is going to be an unfamiliar environment for them. Socially, these are going to be new peers that they're meeting. So there's a lot of learning that happened last year in the Bridges program for those students from district school boards. And again, I think it really helped them to not only grow as individuals, but close some of those gaps again, that instead of doing that in their first year of post-secondary, where not only do they have all the new demands of the academic side of things, but now they've got the whole social and independent living. They're sorting some of that out while they're here at W. Ross in that independent, semi-supported environment. So I think, again, the feedback that we received from the students last year, having completed the program, really spoke to those issues, not so much the academics, but definitely all those additional skills, and the time that they spent here was very valuable.
Yeah, I'll give a quick anecdote. It was really interesting. It was actually on a tour for the Bridges program, and the TVI, the itinerant, was along for the tour with the parents and the student, and we were checking out the house and where the student would live and talking about the program. And it was the TVI, the itinerant, who said to the parent, now, you know, do you want your child's first independent living experience to be in a environment like this, or do you want it to be where there are no, you know, formal supports and supports that are centered around the unique needs of your student? So, you know, good sales pitch, I guess. It was the TVI did the selling, I think. So yeah, the residence component is vital. They do all of those things. It is independent living. It goes from, you know, supported to semi-supported to, you know, fully independent in most ways, but with that backup there behind them should they need it. As part of that, you know, our school, mental health is an extremely important component of what we do here. Many times our students come to us and they are not in a great space in terms of their ability to learn because of mental health challenges that they've had, or just well-being. I don't want to suggest that it's mental health always, but mental well-being, I think, is the most important phrase to use. And so we have those supports in place, you know, psychologists, we have social workers and therapists and all kinds of folks who can assist with that. It's very important. And then you have the access to the regular residence programs. You have access as a Bridges student to whatever we do in the school. We're not saying, no, you can't do that because you're a Bridges student. If you want to go in the Gold Ball League, you can do that. If you want to go on outings with some other group in the resident, you can do that sort of thing. The thing is that you get to just decide to the greatest degree. Trying to think if there's anything key that I missed here. Well, one actually I think is the role of guidance. I discussed before the challenges in a district school board setting, the connections that guidance has with these students. Here, you know, we have small, but sometimes still significant numbers of graduates. I mean, I think 30 some odd graduates year to year, some years. This year, 26, something, I think it's 26 students. That's a lot for a school of 170, 180 students. But, you know, we have Darren, who's, you know, dedicated to that core group of students, who's able to facilitate the connections, et cetera, with the post-secondary institutions. Darren, you want to jump in there and add any?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. So certainly, you know, one of the key things that when a student, certainly coming from a district school board, we want to make sure that they have the courses that they need, not only to get their diploma if they have not yet graduated, and having all those requirements being priority number one. The next is, again, helping them with their, you know, career exploration in terms of what is the post-secondary program that they're interested in applying to. Some students have a very good understanding and a very good idea of what they are wanting to pursue. They've been doing research throughout their high school career. They've been using platforms like Career Cruising or My Blueprint or Zello, which is what we use here at the school, to help them with their research and help them refine some of those decisions. So, but for some students, you know, they're still at a point where they're undecided, and a big part of, you know, of the guidance role is helping them to sort that out, so that by the time they apply to post-secondary, which typically every year is January the 15th of the school year for university applications, and February the 1st for college applications, that they have a very, you know, they're confident in what they're wanting to apply to, and that they have the prerequisites to apply. You know, guidance very much is, there's a bridging component to guidance as well, in terms of connecting students with resources at the post-secondary institutions, whether that is through our dual credit courses that we offer. We work very closely, as Dan has already mentioned, with the student accessibility office at Conestoga. And, you know, this is a great opportunity not only for students to develop those self-advocacy skills, because we talk a lot about, when they do the dual credit, because they're now in a college environment with that dual credit, their IEP, which is something that, you know, has followed them through their high school career, you know, when they move to post-secondary, it can be a big jump from an IEP to what's known as an accommodation letter at college, university. And an IEP, often, you know, things are provided to students in high school and through their career, whereas when they get to university or college, you know, it becomes a much more independent and self-advocacy role in terms of students connecting with either the Accessibility Services Office whether it's directly with their college professors or university professors. And there's a whole learning component to that. And by doing the dual credit and working with Conestoga in their accessibility services office, students actually have that opportunity to go through that process before they actually do it the following year with the accessibility office at their preferred college university that they actually end up going to and completing their program. So again, another great opportunity for them. The other thing that as a guidance counselor, students need to pay for college, and there are different scholarships and bursaries and government supports that are available, including specifically for students with disabilities. So this is something that we're able to do at WROS is, as Dan mentioned, our colleagues in district school boards and guidance counselors, they have large numbers of students to basically assist and support. We can actually really focus and drill down to things like if a student is applying for OSAP funding, the Ontario Student Assistance Program, we can talk about the other supports in terms of financials, like the bursary for students with disabilities and the Canada Student Grant and Services Equipment for persons with permanent disabilities, which opens up a wide amount of funding that's accessed through the student accessibility offices. And by giving students that understanding ahead of time, it just prepares them more for when they actually are on campus and they're landing in their new place in September. They've already made those established connections, and they're aware of the resources and the supports that are available. So again, it's not as if they're going to be shocked or surprised or not sure of what happens next, which can happen to some students. So Bridges allows students to have that opportunity. And the other thing is we have there are always student recruitment officers that we connect with at the colleges and at the universities who can speak to the different programs that students may be considering, so that students have an opportunity to ask questions, understand the prerequisites, understand the outcomes that, by taking this program, here are the different careers or other graduate programs that can lead to what I may want to do down the road. So, we have students that last year we walked down to Brantford Collegiate Institute, a local high school, where we were actually able to, join the students there, listening to the student recruitment officers from the college and universities around the province, as well as having some come here. Mohawk College, Conestoga College, Fanshawe College are very popular with students from WROS, just for a variety of reasons, some great programs. And we have really good connections with the accessibility services offices and the financial services offices there. So students can make some of those connections, get some of their questions answered ahead of time, and really feel in a good spot and well prepared when it does come time to apply and move on beyond WROS, as well as opportunities to tour the residences and tour the actual facilities, the campuses, as it's going to relate to orientation and mobility. How easy is it to navigate? What are public services in terms of transportation available in those areas? And now with COVID, a lot of that's moved to remote learning, but more and more colleges are opening up and universities for small tours, so we can facilitate some of those as well. So those are some of the things that, in terms of guidance, students can access in the Bridges program here at WROS.
Great. I just noted there's a question here from Mark. Hey, Mark. And his question is, what guidance or direction would you give to employees in post-secondary schools to improve learning environments for students' transitions and success, whether those schools are part of Bridges or not? My initial answer, and I'll turn it over to Darren and Marissa if they've got anything to add, is getting things, exposure for the student to the school ahead of time, as you just heard Darren discuss there, making sure that there's plenty of opportunity to familiarize themselves with the physical layout, with the technological requirements, with the platforms involved, where help can be located, getting way ahead of any materials that might be required, and really thinking about that communication during the application process, perhaps with the students around what's required in the course and how it will be managed in terms of accessibility. I don't know, Darren or Marissa.
I think as well, to add to that, just it becomes a personal sort of decision as well for some students. Talking directly with their instructors can be a real challenge, but it's an important piece that students get practice doing that so that they can actually advocate, but as well as making sure that the student accessibility office is something that they are very comfortable and familiar with. For many students, that can become a real hub for not only support, but also for social and connections. Those offices for students that are heading off to post-secondary for students with disabilities, they are a wealth of support and information and social connection, as well as providing, there are student wellness centers. There are just a number of different social connections and groups and organizations. And a lot of that actually is focused around the accessibility office. So when it comes to actually to your question about, how can instructors be more aware? I think it's working with the student, working with the accessibility services office to fully understand what their needs are. And if they're not being met, to get on that very quickly so that the student doesn't fall behind and, all the associated concerns that can sometimes lead to.
That's great. I just want to finish what I had to say. Just the last section was really looking ahead at the program. We're going to take the next 6 months to sort of hit a bit of a reset in terms of our thoughts around the program. Not that we're going to change things drastically, but we have the opportunity to look at things again. We're in that process. And then, we already have, in terms of candidates for next year, we have 5 students from outside of W. Ross already looking at applying to the program, which is really exciting. Still pretty early in the year to be thinking about September, but some have gotten on things, and that's wonderful. And we anticipate a full group of 10 for next year. And I would say too that if it goes over 10, we get to a certain number, we can run a second cohort of it, but we can also take in students and offer many of the aspects of what we do, if not all, but in a slightly tweaked way if we need to. That's what we're doing right now. We have 11 as opposed to 10. That student is still getting access to the vast majority, if not everything that he would through the Bridges program. So yeah, we're not going to turn anybody away who has a need. That's not what we're interested in. So that's all I have. I don't know if Marissa, Darren, you want to add anything, or if there's any other questions. I think we're about out of time, but.
I was just going to say, if there's any questions about the application process or anything like that, you're certainly welcome to get a hold of us here at the school. I think the brochure for the Bridges program is going to be linked to this presentation, so you can take a look at that if you haven't got a copy of that already. But you could email myself at Marissa, that's with one S, marissa.parker@ontario.ca, or Dan or Darren as well at the same format at ontario.ca for any assistance or any answers to questions if you think of something after this.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to our presenters, Darren, Dan, and Marissa. Thank you so much. Very informative. I have always wanted to learn a little bit more about the Bridges program. We are probably in the new year, we're actually going to put together a moderated panel discussion of various people from post-secondary colleges, universities, adaptive technologists, accessibility counselors, individuals that look after the bursary, just to get some more answers to questions that teachers have, who want to see all of their kids, go on and succeed in a post-secondary environment. So I think the Bridges program sounds amazing. So I'm glad I learned more about that. And I'm sure the attendees who were here live, did as well. And for those of you who are watching this presentation as an archived presentation, again, you can certainly ask any questions by emailing Darren, Dan, or Marissa. And if for some reason you didn't catch their email addresses, they did say it. I'm andrea.voss@frontierhyphen.cnib.ca. And anyway, you can always email me with the presentation title in the subject line of the email address and put your question in the body, and I can certainly forward it as well. So, and what Marissa said is totally true. So within this archive presentation, we will link or provide a file that has the brochure for the Bridges program, so everyone can have access to that. Okay,
Thank you very much.
wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
So much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.